The cries rose from beneath a fallen pine. 3 wolf pups, small and trembling, half buried in snow, whimpered for a mother long gone. Their pack had moved on days earlier when the blizzard closed in. Now the forest pressed cold against their ribs, the wind howling through the trees. Hunger crept closer. No one was meant to survive it. Above them, the pines groaned. Snow deepened. The pups fell still. Then, a shadow broke through the white. A doe stepped from the trees, her breath pluming in the freezing air. She should have run. Wolves were her death. But she didn't. She stood there, trembling ears twitching at their cries. One pup lifted its head weakly, nose reaching toward her. The doe hesitated, then bent low, brushing the snow from its back with her muzzle. She lay down beside them, wrapping her body around the shivering heap. Through the storm, predator and prey huddled together. And for that night, survival meant something new. Dawn broke gray and brittle. The storm had passed, but the forest stayed silent. Steam rose from the doe's back where her warmth met the frost. The pup stirred first. Tiny paws brushed against her legs, muzzles searching for milk that wasn't there. The doe shifted, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to flee, but she didn't. She nuzzled one pup gently, her breath fogging in the air. Tracks circled the clearing, fox, raven, something larger. The forest was hungry again. She rose slowly, trembling, and took a few careful steps. The pups stumbled after her, falling through the snow, whining softly. The sound was fragile, too loud for safety, too small for the wild. Every movement drew eyes from the dark. Predators waited for weakness. She knew it, but she kept moving. In a forest ruled by teeth and cold, a creature built for fear had chosen to protect what should have killed her. And that choice would change everything. The days that followed were carved in hunger. The doe led the wolf pups through the forest, her hooves crunching over ice, their small paws sinking into snowdrifts. She stopped often, listening. Every creak of a tree or wing beat of a crow made her heart race. But when the pups cried, she turned back every time. She had lost her own fawn that winter, to wolves, maybe even to this pack, before it vanished. Yet something inside her refused to leave these pups to the same fate. When the cold bit too hard, she scraped snow away to reach the dry moss beneath, curling her legs around them until their trembling eased. When the wind howled, she angled her body against it, a living wall of warmth. At night, the forest tested them. Once a red fox crept near, drawn by the scent of milk and meat. The doe stamped hard, hooves cracking the ice, driving it back into the shadows. Another night, a lone owl swooped low, a warning from above. She lifted her head and scanned the darkness until she saw what she feared, a lynx. The cat crouched low, its fur blending into the drifts. The pups whimpered, pressing closer. The doe's muscles locked, her breath short and sharp. There was nowhere to run. Then the lynx leapt. Snow burst around them, claws, hooves, a blur of movement. The doe reared, her front legs striking, antlerless but defiant. The lynx caught her flank, teeth grazing hide, but she turned, slammed her shoulder into its ribs, and drove it off into the trees. When the forest went still again, the pups crept out, whimpering softly. One licked her wound, another nosed her leg. She breathed hard, blood darkening the snow beneath her, but she stayed standing. By morning, the wound had frozen over. The pups followed her closely now, not just for warmth but because they'd learned what she had become, their shield. Each day, she led them farther from the valley of predators, toward the high ridges where the snow thinned and the trees broke open to the sky. The forest had taken her fawn. Now, she was raising its hunters, not as enemies, but as her own. By the time the thaw came, the pups were no longer helpless. Their legs were strong, coats thick, eyes bright with life. They chased each other through the melting snow, circling the doe as she grazed near the river. She watched quietly, every sense alert. When one strayed too far, a flick of her ears brought it back. Words were never needed. Under her care, they'd learned her rhythm, how to move in silence, how to rest when the wind changed. And she'd learned theirs, a growl for danger, a glance for trust. By summer, they roamed farther each day, but always returned. They came back with full bellies or new scars, collapsing beside her until their breathing matched. Then one morning, howls echoed from the north, the sound of a pack. The wolves lifted their heads, torn between past and present. The doe stood still. She had always known. The eldest brushed his nose against her neck, not goodbye, but gratitude. Then they vanished into the trees, gray fur fading into green. When the last one was gone, she turned back to the river, alone but not hollow. Her silence was no longer lost. It was love that had learned to let go. The forest had healed, rivers full, grass high, life moving through the valleys again. The doe walked slowly now, her coat graying, her steps careful. She listened to the old rhythms. Water, wind, and the heartbeat of the world she'd helped keep alive. Then, a sound behind her. Heavy and familiar. A rustle, then a low growl. She turned, muscles tensing. From between the birches, 3 wolves stepped into the light. Grown now, broad-shouldered, eyes bright, fur silvered by age and strength. The doe froze. Her breath caught. The eldest stepped forward, scar glinting on his flank. He stopped a few feet away, tail low and gaze soft. Recognition flickered. She lowered her head. He answered with a low rumble, once a sound of hunger, now one of belonging. Then a blur above the ridge. A mountain lion leapt from the cliff, claws bared, a streak of gold and shadow. The wolves moved first. The eldest lunged, slamming into the predator mid-air. Snow burst around them, the clearing alive with chaos, growls, snapping jaws, the heavy thud of hooves. The doe kicked hard, striking the lion's shoulder as it twisted free, only to meet the second wolf's teeth. The lion slashed wildly, catching fur in air. The wolves circled tighter, moving as one, a living wall of motion and sound. The youngest darted in, clamped its jaw around the lion's leg, pulling it down. The eldest struck again, a single decisive blow that sent the predator tumbling into the brush. Silence followed. The lion limped into the trees, beaten. The doe stood trembling but alive, surrounded by the very predators who had once been her children. They circled her, brushing against her sides, checking her scent, her breath, as she once had done for them. The wolves had come home, not as hunters, but as protectors. As dawn broke, they disappeared back into the forest, their shapes fading into gold. The doe watched until they were gone. Her heart was steady. The forest was whole again. And where fear had once ruled, love had taken root.